I'd like to call this meeting of the Newington Board of Education to order. The time is 7 o'clock. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Deb, would you please call the roll?
Here.
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 Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to open up to public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. Time is limited to 3 minutes. If you're in the room, you can come to the end of the table. If you're on Google Meet, please raise your hand to be recognized. Yeah, over there.
At the very end.
And please state your name and street for the record.
Green button.
Thank you. One more time. It's not green.
There you go.
Oh, okay, there we go. Wendy Holness, 31 Barkledge Drive, Newington. I'm here today to express my concern for the state of the Board of Education, particularly how the marked absenteeism of board member Anastasia Yop, her questionable residency in Newington, and her current legal woes as to what I see as a slumlord behavior are grossly affecting the board's moral and, by extension, its effectiveness in providing services for Newington's educators and children. Let me preface this by saying that Ms. Yop has not been found guilty by a judge or jury at this time because the case is pending litigation, but the severity of the charges, along with her poor attendance and questionable residency, concern me enough to cast a pall on the entire board and town and warrant resignation or removal while the court process plays out. For her to remain on the board under the circumstances gives the appearance of impropriety, which this board and our school system do not deserve. Should Ms. Yop refuse to step down, I ask this board to investigate her residency. I admittedly do not know what defines residency, but she herself has indicated multiple times on social media she does not live in Newington, and it has been stated in other legal documents for her many pending cases. Her attendance at one meeting and 3 by Zoom out of 12, or 13, I think, as of tonight, is about 25% attendance, and that would support the non-residency theory. This would not be the first time in Newington that we have found non-residents sitting on boards or committees making decisions for our town, and such a blatant violation would be appalling. I also ask that the board consider removal based on impropriety, non-performance, and distraction, and that it be dealt with expeditiously as the board is entering the critical budget season. In closing, I say passionately that character matters. Integrity matters. We are living in tumultuous times when the normalization of unethical and improper behavior has become acceptable by many people. Not with me and not in my town. Newington is better than this. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. If there's anyone online that wishes to speak, please raise your hand. Ms. Yap, we have you recorded as in attendance. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. So we can move on to agenda item C. Oh, sorry. Ms. McCall.
Hi, yes, Carly McCall on Connecticut Avenue in Newington. I would just like to echo my neighbor's sentiments. I am concerned about the effectiveness of the Board of Education if they don't investigate this matter fully, and also if board members are not fully dedicated to their position. I don't think people should be responsible for children's education if they're not responsible in their own private life. That's all. I echo everything my neighbor said, though.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands raised. Oh, Ms. Rodriguez.
Sorry, I was having a little trouble with my connectivity. Hi, Jennifer Rodriguez, 71 Northwood Road. I'm speaking today as a constituent and resident of Newington. I echo the sentiment of so many who have already spoken and or sent in emails about what we are seeing with Miss Yap and the situation as it unfolds. It's very concerning. I don't think that I could speak more eloquently than those who have already spoken and sent in emails. I'm just expressing my general concern over the situation and the expectation of our Board of Ed members and how they present themselves to our community within Newington and outside of our community. And I will say that I'm also very concerned that the Republican Party hasn't taken steps to request that she step down during this time. And I think that's very telling of the party in terms of how they feel about things like law and order perception, understanding children, and the responsibility that the Board of Ed has to to the constituents in town, the residents in town, and more importantly to our most vulnerable people, which is our students. So this is very concerning to me, and I would support the board in whatever action that they would like to take moving forward.
Thank you. Don't think I see any other hands. If anyone is having issues, that there's a little hand button in the meeting to raise your hand. Okay. We can move on to agenda item C, a discussion concerning performance of board member. We're proposing for executive session. We need a motion.
Motion to move into executive session to discuss the concern of a performance of a board member.
Second.
Motion second. Do we have any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
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 Anthony Mary,
Yes.
Timothy,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
Anastasia Yap.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. So for the public, the board is going to go into executive session. If you want to stay on this link, we're going elsewhere. So, and then anyone in the room needs to step out and we'll be back.
A regular session.
Okay, we're back in regular session right now. Jessica.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda. I will move that the Newington Board of Education amend the agenda to allow the chair to make a public statement.
Second. Did he give it to Sam?
Sam, second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion to amend the agenda for a statement? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
Sean Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Mealing,
Abstain.
Tim Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
Anastasia Yap.
Abstain.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Motion passed.
The motion passed.
7 with
7-0,
2
2 abstain.
abstentions. Okay. Yep. Sorry. Okay, so the statement, I'm going to read into the record and then we'll move on. The board met in executive session as we were very concerned about the current media attention that has been brought to us concerning Ms. Yap. Additionally, we were troubled by Ms. Yap's poor attendance and lack of participation at board meetings. We will let the court decide on the charges, but we are concerned about how this impacts her overall performance and her ability to do the job as a board member. We have called on Ms. Yap to resign, but she has refused. As an elected official, the board does not have the authority to have her removed. This board is committed to not letting these distractions interfere with our mission and duties and refuse to allow such noise to deter us from the important work we are doing as a board. The well-being and support of our students and faculty members remain our foremost concern. This statement reflects the consensus of 7 board members with Ms. Yap and Mr. Mealy abstaining. And now we can move on to agenda item D, approval of minutes.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented for the approval of minutes for January 29th, February 5th, February 10th, February 12th, and February 19th of 2025.
Second.
We have a motion second. Is there any discussion? All right, we're voting on approval of minutes for those 5 dates. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Agenda item E, standing committee items, policy. Ms. Weaver, do we have anything?
We have a million policies as always, but we will be looking at those at next meeting. And just a reminder for those who love to attend our policy meetings, there will be another one on Monday, March 3rd, aka this next coming Monday, 7 o'clock. Helen Nelson Room and virtual. Thank you.
Do we have any curriculum updates? Thank you, Ms. Weaver.
We do not have any curriculum committee updates. However, we also have a meeting next Tuesday. I got it right this time, the 4th, at 7 o'clock in this.
6:30.
6:30, almost got it right. 6:30, Helen Nelson Room. Please attend if you are interested.
Thank you. Dr. Brummett?
Good evening. I will not read the report to you. I would encourage you to get caught up on what's happening in the district from all of our departments. But what is not in that report that I would like to publicly state is today we were notified that Principal Tara Tigno of Newington High School has been named the Connecticut High School Principal of the Year. We are extraordinarily proud of her. And there'll be many celebrations
I know where it's
forthcoming.
Peter.
But she also joins Marco Trillo as the Assistant Principal of the Year for the state of Connecticut. So we have a lot to be proud of here in Newington Public Schools. So thank you very much. That concludes my report.
Yeah, any questions for Dr. Brummett? And we greatly congratulate Ms. Tigno. That's a very well-deserved honor, and we are proud for her to represent Newington. New business, we have to adopt we have to transmit our budget to the town by Saturday, I believe. So, last week, we made almost $250,000 in reductions. And I believe we have more that we can discuss tonight. But Dr. Brummett, first, do you want to just give some updates on where we stand?
Yes, I would. I have updated the PowerPoint just so all board members and public, because this is posted on our website, would have access to information that's posed by the board, as well as things that have come in from the public over the course of this budget process. So I'm going to fast forward to the end of this presentation, which is still booting up because it's lengthy. Okay, so we had some questions as a follow-up from last meeting. One of them was requesting detailed information about the Perkins grant. That is now, let me share this on the screen. Ms. Freeman, if you wouldn't mind just briefly providing an overview of your summary, which is linked into the PowerPoint.
So the information about the Perkins grant is contained in there. It's a federal grant. There's information about how it is allocated, state by state. And in order to apply for the Perkins grant, it's actually very extensive, as I know Dr. Bremmett shared at the last meeting. The woman who writes the grant is Lori Kyler. She is also the workforce development specialist, and she needs to report on the size, scope, and quality of the program. So we have to meet certain criteria for our CTE program in order to receive the grant. So you can imagine it's a good incentive for school systems to have robust and high-quality CTE programs. So consistently, we have met those requirements. They're clear about how the money can be spent. And so the vast majority of the funds that we receive from Perkins go into consumables for classes like culinary, all the baking courses. We do use some funding for stipends as well. And I know, Mr. Sharma, you had a question about that. So the 4 stipends are listed in there as well.
So at the very bottom and on the screen are the breakdown of how the money is spent, and the grand total is $52,468. And you can see how it is spent. Stipends and curriculum writing make up about $10,000. Okay? So that is the Perkins grant. Other follow-up questions are relative to the busing. Now, again, the board has already passed the capital budget, which did include our bus replacement cycle, but we did have a question from a board member as to how do we compare, that's yours. How do we compare with other districts about our busing costs? And again, it's a very challenging comparison because only 4 districts in the state of Connecticut have their own bus operation. So what Lou did is take a sample district such as Weathersfield and try to overlay their costs over how our costs are decided. So I'm going to fast forward to the end of this to show you. In that memo, he outlines how he did the data. He worked with Mr. Barnes and Ms. Simon in our bus garage about how to calculate a very difficult calculation because we're comparing a different protocol. But I know Mr. Newton indicated that he's getting questions from his constituents relative to what's the actual bottom line expenditures. So we have our actual expenditures from 22-23 show under this analysis that we saved $778,820 by having our own fleet. And then in the 22, 23, 24 fiscal year, we saved $449,687. I will tell you, these years don't, as we move forward, don't reflect the ongoing continuous increase in contracted services. For example, I was at a superintendent meeting yesterday, and one of my colleagues who has a contracted services situation was saying he was facing a 20% increase, and that is a Connecticut school district. So while these numbers are quite considerable already, I believe they will only continue to grow. Now, what Lou also put on his analysis is that we have a very, I won't call it liberal, but our busing policy is much more, there's a shorter distance that people become eligible for busing. And the board's well aware of that. We've had numerous conversations about that over the years. So some of these districts probably go with the, generous is a good word. Some of these other districts probably go with the state mandates. We do not. We allow people to qualify for a bus a quarter mile closer. And as you've heard in my other and Mr. Barnes's presentations, that we are a good partner with other town entities such as Dial a Ride, Parks and Rec, the library, public safety, the police, to leverage them using our buses. And it's much cheaper for them because all they have to do is pay for the time of the driver versus going to a DATCO and renting out a contracted service. So those are the comparisons for the 2 years that we have available to us. If anyone wants to hear a little bit more about Lou's analysis, this memo gives you that information, but I'll turn it over to the board chair whether I should go deeper into this memo and ask Lou to speak to it or whether that's sufficient.
Sufficient, I'm hearing. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you, Lou, for putting this together.
Yep, and thank you to Lou and Mr. Barnes and Ms. Simon for their very thorough analysis, which the board can read at its leisure. It is compelling to me that this is still the best way to go for our system. All right, and then the board posed what would be the cost, or can we cut the central direction or other supplies from 10% to 5%? And the answer to that is yes. My apologies. That total would reduce the budget by $2,100 if the board so chooses this evening. And I'm going to show a sheet that outlines all that. Then the board asked whether or not we could look at a differentiation of fees besides just that 125. I did pose to Mr. Myers, the athletic director, would it be okay to do staggered fees? And he said that would be a bookkeeping nightmare. But what he did is break down for the board based on our current participation of about 800 athletes over the last 5 years. He's projecting the following. In his budget right now at the $100, and again, we established in previous meetings that we are well below all of our neighbors. And all of I shouldn't say our neighbors, people that are part of the CCC, that's our conference. So at 100, we're about $47 below what most of our conference colleagues are charging. If we were to go with a $115 fee, that would provide us with $92,115. And if we went with a $125 fee, that would provide us with $125. So these would be the different savings the board would incur. So let me fast forward to this page so you can see how it breaks down. I use the figure on this page, the reconciliation page, for purpose of this simulation. And I will share the tab the right way this time. Okay, so this tab or this worksheet shows you from the other evening what the impact would be if we already made the motions, or the board did, on the green items. So I'm trying to scroll down here. Under pending reductions, using the participation fee of $115, the board could reduce the budget by $11,400. The board may recall the other day, the previous board meeting, that charging the $125 would also get us about a $20,000 offset. So the differentiation there from 125 to 115 is this amount. To be sure, Mr. Myers confirmed that every year we are allowing families who have financial challenges to get breaks on this or reductions, and any hardships are absolutely taken into consideration when a family wants to participate and their finances won't permit that. So I don't know if there's any questions.
Yeah, it
on
looks
that.
like Ms. Weaver has a question on that.
Yeah, just to clarify, I think one was, is it still the buy two, get one free?
No, this
model?
simulation
Okay.
would mean every sport you participate in, you do pay the 115.
Okay. Is, just to clarify, our model right now is it's all three sports. You don't get a discount on the third?
No, right
Yeah,
now,
we do.
you do
Spring
get the
is
third
free.
one free. And as I mentioned in a previous board meeting, the athletic director has noted that there is participation reductions
Right,
during the free season. Sometimes there's not as much buy-in when there's no, quote, skin in the game. So that's something he's noted for the board to consider. So that's still kind of
And my other question was, the last time fees have increased was?
it's at least 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been quite some time.
Okay.
All right, and while I'm on this chart, I can just use that for our talking points. The 5% reduction of central office supplies would result in the $2,100 reduction. As you can see, we're going on the far right-hand column is column F, shows you how the percentage is shrinking. So reduction in athletic fees and the office supplies doesn't move the needle that much. The next item that the board asked for us to consider was the excess cost legislative offset, which can be used for what we call buy-aheads. Let me put some context around that. This legislative offset this year so far has passed through the legislation resoundingly. We're hearing chatter that the governor either won't sign it and it still becomes in effect, or he would veto it, which would still allow the legislator to go back in and through a 2/3 vote or whatever their protocol is, it can still go through. It has bipartisan support. So there is a bit of a risk having this as an offset right now, but my contacts who I reached out to during our break did feel like it is something that's likely to go through even if it hits some of those roadblocks. Lou today, at my request, reanalyzed our projections and he felt more comfortable with a slightly lower number of 338,548. And that was based on our current number of students who are qualifying for the excess cost and a percentage of that cost that we would expect to get reimbursed to us. So that is what our current projections are. As you can imagine, there's no crystal ball here. But that is our best estimate as to how this new allocation would affect Newington. So that amount of money could reduce the budget down to 6%. And then lastly, to bring us to below 6%, which was some of the sentiment around the board table, Lou felt comfortable that he could adjust down from a variety of our line items, the employee benefits, because they're trending lower than we expected. So he's comfortable balancing that to get us to 5.94, 53,550, a reduction in employee benefits. The board did want to have a little more time to ponder the paraeducator salary adjustment from 4% to 3%. It is not calculated into that 5.94%. So if the board would prefer to use that, that is another $17,000 offset, but currently it is not part of the calculation here. If you're wondering how we compare to the town at this time, this number, 5.94, would be extremely comparable, slightly below. I think they're at 5.98, though they haven't presented yet. This is what was shared with me by the town manager, a couple of tenths of a percentage higher than us at this time. So we are bringing it down on par to the town's likely ask. And that is kind of where we were able to get that. And I'll turn it back to board chair for any further questions or discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Newton?
Question, Dr. Brummett, what is the mill rate offset for that $5 million difference? How many mills will it increase based on last year's, which is all we have? Is it still 3.2 mills?
I'm going to have to defer that to Lou. We'd have to do an analysis.
Somewhere between $2.5 and $3 million. I couldn't answer that right, not with any accuracy.
Yeah, I'd just like to know what the mill offset would be.
I can research that. I can research that, but I wouldn't have that tonight. We'd have to do.
Without the towns.
Yes.
Sign.
Ms. Weaver?
And I think once the difficulty also in this every year is whatever we pass, it's still going to go to the town and we get told what it is anyway, not to diminish our power in any way. It's just a frustrating part of this process is that regardless, it's going to be set and we have to think of things. Obviously, doing this diligence to cut where we can right now, I think is critical. And I'm just wanted to say thank you to those advocates who advocated for the excess cost legislation. It is one of the things that I think not only is a great thing for this budget, but I would love to see it in future budgets and have a sustainable actual funding flow of that. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Yeah, and as Dr. Brumma had alluded to, this was a request of the town manager to get because they were here on the 5th when we presented originally, when Dr. Brumma presented originally, and then he had followed up with an email to have us reduce it to this level below 6. So we're doing what he asked with as much as we can. So, and I agree, the legislation for that excess cost is definitely, you can see, helping a significant amount. So I think that's a no-brainer that we should make a motion for that one. And then we can probably discuss the others.
I'm happy to make that motion.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
No problem. I move the 2025-2026 Board of Education budget be adjusted by the subtraction of $338,548 in account 1200-599-30 for excess cost legislative offset to be used for buy-aheads.
Second.
All right, Ms. Weaver made the motion, Ms. Yap seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, we're voting for the reduction of $338,548 in special education. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mary Beecher,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
Sean Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Manning,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati.
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
Anastasia Yap.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Happy to continue giving motions. If you want to, please.
Just so you don't feel that the burden is on you. I'm gonna motion, the 2025-2026 Board of Education budget be adjusted by the increase in student participation fee from $100 to $115 and the subtraction of $11,400 in the account 3220-59920 and by subtraction of $615 in account 3220-59930 for the athletic program.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Ms. Weaver?
Yeah, I want to say this one's a little bit hard for me and a struggle, but I think just from a financial analysis, again, I think Mr. Newton and I have similar views of rob Peter to pay Paul here. We obviously don't want it on the taxpayers, but they're going to be paying in it regardless. I'm looking at it just from my standpoint of 8 years, usually a 5 to 10 year window. Our community fees have gone up every so often. We froze fees for 5 years, 3, 4 years during COVID for community use fees. Unfortunately, inflation is just not a thing you can just ignore or try and get away from. So I think 25 per sport is a lot. I think 15 is not the best, but I think it'll help our budget. And it's one of the things I think if Mr. Myers was recommending too, I do want to at least acknowledge his expertise in this. And we also are still, I think, lower by $30 for every sport compared to our DERG and our CCC counterparts. So as long as we're still lower than that by a good percentage, I'm happy with that. Again, these are not the budget decisions I super love, so it will be a unenthusiastic support of this one.
Mr. Halloran?
I just want to echo what Ms. Weaver said. We don't like to take anything away from the athletic program, considering it's stellar in this town, and we'd like to keep it that way. 115 is still lower than the average of similar districts, significantly. But I agree that Mr. Myers was able to find a way to offset what we need to do for the budget to do right by our taxpayers, but also support the athletic program. And not an easy vote, but I think it strikes the balance.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, so we're voting to increase the student participation fee from $100 to $115. Could you have a roll call vote, please?
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
Sean Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Manning,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
Anastasia Yap,
You're on mute, Anastasia.
Anastasia Yap. She's there.
She's not
The motion
responding.
passes 8-0.
Thank you. That one hurts me personally, but that's okay. All right.
Do you want to?
Sure.
I'll make the motion to move the 2025-2026 Board of Education budget be adjusted by the subtraction of 2,100 in account 2320-690-30 for the reduction of central office other supplies.
Second.
Thank you. A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, we're voting to reduce the central office supplies. Roll call vote, please.
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
Sean Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Manning,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
Anastasia Yap.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
I'll move the the 2025-2026 Board of Education budget be adjusted by the subtraction of $53,550 in account 2950-201-30 for final adjustments and employee benefits.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion second for employee benefits. Is there any discussion? Ms. Weaver.
We're not subtracting employee benefits. I
Oh,
want to make that very, just, it's in the, no, it's not you. I just want to make sure of that.
Yes, it's an adjustment based on trends. Everyone's benefits will not be impacted.
Clarification, all good.
That's all it costs us. That would be
Yeah.
amazing, but,
Yes, that would be nice.
okay, is there any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
Sean Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Manning,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
Anastasia Yap.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Okay. I personally would not like to do the next one. I think that our pairs are very critical to how, to the support of our teachers, and they actually are teachers, in a sense. So I think that they deserve to have an increase of 4%, but we can have Ms. Weaver.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that I think that stood out to us is, and I think it'll continue to be a conversation around this table. We are one of the only to not offer paraeducator benefits. That would be $2 million to our budget. So it's one of those things that I feel like we kind of keep passing the buck on. But I don't think, in light of that too, I don't think it is wise to continue to hurt the backbone of our schools anymore. So I would not support putting, if this motion was put forward, would not support it. I think our paraeducator is great. And I just wanted to again highlight our Everyday Hero last time, who was not Everyday Hero, the nominator of our Everyday Hero learning Braille for one of our students. Deserves over 4%, but I'll keep it there.
Mr. Halloran.
I agree. I think our paraeducators are vital to the well-performing schools that we have in our district. I regret that we have yet to find a way to provide them benefits, as we are one of the few districts who do not, but the line item is just too heavy. So I think doing what we can at this point by staying at 4% and not reducing to 3%, is as fair as we can get at this point. But I think it's a good show of support for our paras because we do have wonderful people in our schools that make a big difference.
Mr. Sharma?
Yeah, so I just want to echo everything, what everyone else said. I think, we do not offer medical benefits. And I think if we do offer them, it's gonna cost what, about 2 million? Right, and I think we need to, stay like above market in terms of wages for our paras. So I think, we should, be at 4%.
Mr. Newton?
While I agree with not cutting, I just questioned this has no effect on the union contracts. They've all been settled, or are we up in arbitration this year? How do those stand?
Paraeducators are not in a union in Newington.
What the unions come looking for.
Since they're not a bargaining unit, I'm not sure that the unions would be able to hold them up because we have other non-bargaining units in that I don't believe they're ever used in comparisons. Lou, any comment on that?
Comparisons for paras would be against communities around us that have a para contract. So it wouldn't be any of
It's not
our.
good.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't have any, impact on any of our departments.
Okay, are there any other thoughts or, suggestions or anything going forward? Go ahead, Tony. Turn on.
I make a motion.
You may, just turn your mic on.
I'd like to make a motion to do away with the DEI grant-funded position and reallocate the funds from that administrative position to teachers and para-educator salaries. That's, I think, $161,400 and something thousand.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Ms. Weaver?
I'm not really clear on this motion because there's no specificity, like what account. And we don't have a DEI officer. We have a chief of innovation, strategy and equity. So if that was meant to be the motion and an account, I'd ask it either be revised or I just don't think that's appropriate to not go by the title of who we employ.
I don't know. Karen, would you be able to locate the line item for that?
Ms.
It is in the
Carr?
other salaries program, the 1190. At the end of your books.
Other salaries?
Correct.
Ms. Carr?
My question is, would that be two questions? One, the removal of the position, and then a second motion or question proposed as to using that grant money elsewhere? I feel like that's not one motion, but
I suppose that is the case, but I guess the first thing would be to determine whether the board agrees to cut that position, because otherwise there won't be grant money freed up otherwise. So I guess step one is to determine that.
Ms. Yap has her hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question as well. So, and a statement. So it's not called DEI, it's called something else. But I do agree with Brittany. Can we make it two motions? Because it will confuse the public. So one to say either, cut the position and then basically exactly what Brittany said. Is it gonna be two motions or can we combine it?
So we have a motion as stands. It can be withdrawn or amended by the original person who made the motion. The position I believe he's referring to is the Chief of Strategy, Innovation, and Equity.
Can I amend it?
Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you. So I'll amend the motion, I guess it would be two motions, to eliminate the $161,489 for Chief of Innovation, Strategy, and Culture for Equity, That's the first part. And then,
So that's
Okay.
your amended motion. Okay.
Second,
So we have an amended motion. Do we have a position? Do we have any?
second.
We heard you, Anastasia. Yeah, you seconded the motion. So we have an amended motion and a second to remove a position. Do we have any discussion? Ms. Weaver?
Do this. I just want to say, I know we've probably had discussions about this this past year. This is a position that's been in the budget for the past 4 years. 5 years now. Yep. And has not seemingly been an issue. So I continue to have no issue with it. And I would just like to say, the equity work that we are doing in this school system is one that should be commended. And I believe that's why we have Principals of the Year. It was specifically brought up in a lot of those interviews, was how are we reaching every single child, particularly in the post-COVID era, where we have extreme need for learning acceleration to address learning loss, and we see a continued achievement gap. And what we've seen is a closure of that achievement gap. And I believe that is due to this position. So I will not support this motion.
Yeah. Mr. Halloran?
Speaking as the chair of the curriculum committee, it's my opinion that this, excuse me, this position is vital to the way we have designed our curriculum, the strategy in which we carry it out, and the efforts we're making to close the achievement gap. I think removing this position from the roles would be detrimental in the way we can actually achieve our academic goals as well as our equity goals, to represent every single student in our district. So I will not be supporting this motion either.
Thank you. Ms. Yap has her hand up and then Mr. Sharma.
Hi, yes. So I will be supporting this motion. I just have a question. I just want to make a statement first. I think Gerald Harrison is an asset to the school system. I've gotten to know him over a while, and I think he's a great person to work for the school. I do think if there was an opportunity to offer him an alternate position, that it would be something that I think we could consider. I don't agree with completely just eliminating him because he does bring a lot of benefits to Newington schools. I can make this statement as the first and only Black elected official in the town of Newington. I do understand the importance of having people around that look like me, but at this moment, we have to, save money at the budget, with our budget. And I do think there's possibly another thing that they can come up with for him to do because he is an asset. Now, in regards to DEI or whatever you've renamed it as, I don't even care. Our president has already made it very clear that they don't want any of these positions. So going against anything that he says, I think is absolutely ridiculous. So I am for cutting this particular position, but make it public that I do think Gerald is an asset to the school system. Thank you.
So I just want to be clear that we are not talking about an individual person. We're talking about a position. It's unfair to bring up a person's name in regards to a budget discussion. This is a position called the Chief of Strategy, Innovation, and Equity. I personally think that is a very important position in our district, regardless of who is in it. I think that just for his own, we just should not be naming names as far as when we're talking about, we don't control staff. That's Dr. Brummett and her staff's job to hire people. We control the budget. So I just wanted to say that, first of all. And then second of all, just in regards to whatever's happening at the nation's capital, that's not a law. It is a something that he put out there. That's his opinion. That's fine. But in Newington, we are focused on equity, inclusion, and innovation. And I think this position is a very critical position for us to keep and have and expand. The position has expanded over the last 5 years. It started as one thing and it has evolved into way more than whatever National Rhetoric is saying is bad. So I would just like to put that on record. Dr. Brummett, would you like to?
Thank you. I want to publicly state that I sent out an email to the board after the last meeting offering to meet with any and all board members if they would like more information about what this position, Chief of Strategy, Innovation, and Equity, entails. And no one took me up on that. And there is so much more to that position that hasn't been even discussed around this table. But to be clear again, this is the work that needs to be done. The work is having an impact. We're being looked at by other systems. We are being looked up as a model for how this is working. We have many things that are happening out of that office, such as our social emotional learning work, our discipline work, helping teachers to understand how to best meet the needs of our children. We are 50% non-white in Newington, 50%. We need help from someone who's an expert to work with us so that we meet the needs of all those students. And I just want to put that on the record that I don't believe there is any other position I would want other than the one that is currently existing, and it has been substantially beneficial to our system and frankly has saved us money, because many districts spend money on consultants that come in and do this work, and we've been able to do it in-house at a substantial savings. So if the board is considering this from a fiscal avenue, that's an important component too. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. I do not know who had their hand up first. Mr. Sharma?
Just have one question for Maureen. So 50% of our student body is non-white, right? And what's the in terms of our teaching staff? I believe it's 92% is white, right? So that's why so we need this position, and this is really good, important work.
Ms. Beatrice?
We've had a lot of conversations, and I personally have been a strong advocate for this position for the last year and a half. And I just want to put a reminder out there that our successes with regard to equity are measurable. And that's the most important thing. We know we're helping our students, but we can actually prove that with the data. So I am definitely not in support of this initiative.
Ms. Weaver?
I just want to reemphasize that this position, again, has been in the budget for 5 years, and it doesn't matter what, but like last year, this board voted. And we also voted in favor of our goals and mission and statement. And in that is equity and inclusion. So I think it reflects what we're trying to do as a school system. It's not easy or comfortable work, but what I don't want to happen is political rhetoric or misinformation get out there about what this position is or not, or claiming it as a DEI hire. This is nothing new. This is before any of that was even in the zeitgeist of political rhetoric. And I think what's important to note is that this is a position that was filled because there was a need from our student body. We were recognizing that there was a growing achievement gap, and it was only exacerbated by the pandemic. And as the only one who was here with Dr. Brummett during COVID, I can tell you how extremely difficult that was. And yet, during that, we put this position in there. So I think it's a direct response of everything that we've seen out of COVID that has exacerbated a lot of the gaps that we've seen. And it's not just race, it's not just special ed, and which also, just so you know, all of our special ed, if you disaggregate it by race, there's still achievement gaps. So I think what's important to note is that there's a lot of need here, and that we've been using this position, and that it's even grown and done more is we're getting more bang for our buck out of this position. So I just want to say, I really want to emphasize that I truly support this position. I wish it was something that we had when I was in school.
Thank you. Ms. Yap? You're on mute if you're speaking.
Oh, sorry. I have a question for Dr. Brummett. Does this position specifically help with bringing in diverse, equity, and inclusive staff, or just students?
This position is largely working with staff staff who serve students to make sure their practices are equitable. This position is not involved in any of the hiring processes. It's strictly about training teachers to work with students.
Okay, I have another question, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So as a minority Black woman myself, and I understand it's easy to try to train people to work with people that look like me, right? Okay. Wouldn't it make more sense to hire more people that look like me instead of train people that don't look like me to work with people that look like me?
So So we've had
Dr. Brummett?
conversations. I'm speaking. So we've had conversations around this board table about the need to hire a diverse staff, and we had a plan. The state required a plan. We went over it. It went to the state. I think it came back and we revised it. So there is a plan in place in Newington Public Schools to hire a diverse staff. In addition, we have a program internal. What's it called? The grow your own.
Grow your own. We're actually expanding. Yes, we have two programs now. One is the Grow Your Own that's been around for a bit, and now we're partnering with Central. But I would like to add that the Human Capital Development Department, which is Mr. Farisi and Ms. Foy, are the department that's in charge of recruiting our staff. So we do have people working on that. It's just not out of the office because the topic at hand is this position. That's not his primary function, but we do have staff that are always seeking to diversify wherever possible.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Carr.
I think what makes this one difficult for some people is we've been practicing equity in our policies since about 1998. And we know because we've been going through the policies since 1996. And people see this as a newer position, and then they see 161,489 going towards this position. So that's why I think, our taxpayers are concerned and bring this to our attention, because that is a big salary for a newer position when equity has been practiced in the schools, obviously not to the same degree. So I think that's why it's being brought to light.
Mr. Newton.
To hop on what Brittany said, I think the issue becomes an issue when we continue to change titles because of the large other things that they do. But I think that without the knowledge that you've changed the position, people go into the budget book and we look and say, wait a minute, this person was this last year, this person was this. Maybe we should be a little more transparent throughout the year when we're getting ready for budgets, whatever, to explain that the positions have developed this way, and that will be the title going forward. Because this, to some people, I've gotten the same emails, they go, it's a bait and switch, and that may or may not be the case, but I think that's where that's being driven from.
The mic has gone off the deep end. That title changed at least 3 years ago.
Ms. Yap.
I do also want to agree with Tim and Brittany in regards to this. I mean, I think the position's been there for about 5 years. And as Brittany said, you guys have been working on this since 1996 or 1998. The town is not going to get more diverse unless more people move there. Okay. And like for me, and I can speak personally myself, I mean, I chose to move there and I'm Black. So like I'm helping diversify your town, right? But it's not going to get better that way. If you've been trying for almost longer than, my whole adult life, we have to find another way. Now, like I said, I do agree that the person in the position, is vital to the school system, but
We're not talking about the
$160,000,
person.
you're cutting
We're
me off.
not, point of order, we're not talking about the person. We are talking about the position.
The position that's held shouldn't use our grant money to fund it. Point blank, that grant money isn't for that. We're choosing to allocate our grant money for that. I think it could be used towards other things. So I do agree that we should, although thank you, Brummett, for saying 3 years ago, change the title. I think that this is something that we shouldn't continue and that the position can be used in a different way. Thank you.
Ms. Weaver.
I just want to point out that we voted on this budget with this in there last year, and board members here have voted for this with it, and there was no issue until this year. So just want to point that out, that this was not an issue until it became in political rhetoric and became a politicized position, in my opinion.
Mr. Halloran.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I want to make a point that the headline for today's meeting should be that we have an assistant principal of the year for the state of Connecticut, along with a high school principal of the year for the state of Connecticut. Part of that decision-making process from that panel was the ability for those two principals to work with the Chief of Innovation Strategy and Culture for Equity as part of the holistic approach to get students to have a fair and equitable shot at education, regardless of culture, background, or economic standing. And I don't believe that I don't believe that if we remove this position, we'd be able to achieve the same results that we have this year. That was a big part of the decision-making process to select these two individuals. I was on one of the panels for Mr. Trilio, and that topic did come up. And I do believe that that is due in part to the work of this position.
Thank you. I think we call the question. Please.
Mary Beatrice.
I'm sorry, I want to just repeat, we're voting to remove this position from, yeah,
No.
thank you.
Brittany Carr.
Abstain.
John Halloran.
No.
Anthony Mealy.
I don't understand. How did you
We are voting to remove the position.
remove it?
Yes, to remove, no to not remove.
So you should be a yes.
Timothy Newton.
Yes.
Amy Parati.
No.
Sam Sharma.
No.
Jessica Weaver.
No.
Anastasia Yap.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Fails.
Huh?
Fails.
I'm sorry. The motion fails 5-4 with one abstain.
I've 5-3, one abstention.
I'm so, I.
No, you're good.
It's okay. It's late. 5-3, one abstention. Fails. Motion fails. Okay. Are there any other suggestions, or I think we're at, can you go back to that? We're at 5.9.
Yes. 5.94,
5.94.
and I believe we did link in a motion, or is it there?
Yep, it's here.
Okay.
All right, so at this point, sounds like we've done all we can do at this point. As far as the budget goes, we're at 5.94%, which is $92,264,913. So we should, if we're all good, we can transmit it to the town. I see. Ms. Yap, there were not two motions. The motion was amended and it failed. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just a little confused. So I know he had originally made two motions in one, and he amended the first one, but I didn't know if he was still making the second motion as well as something separate. It was just a
So
little confusing.
Yep, so the grant money there's no money that opened up due to the elimination of a position that we did not agree to. So there's no need for a second motion.
Okay.
So I think at this point we can transmit to the town. And then obviously the next steps are Dr. Brumman and I will go in a couple of weeks to present as the budget as we transmitted it. So we need a motion to do so. Mr. Halloran.
I move that the Board of Education transmit the 2025-2026 budget to the town manager in the amount of $92,264,913, which represents an increase of 5.94%.
Second.
Thank you, Sean and Sam. Is there any discussion? Ms. Weaver?
Yeah, I just want to say, as I do every budget transmitted, I never think this is an easy one. And I think we always want to go lower from a fiscal standpoint and then always want to go higher from a heart standpoint because I don't think it'll ever be enough for our kids. But just looking at where our DIRG's at too, Berlin at 7.4 was the proposed. I don't know what they're approving at. Seeing North Haven was at 6.99 and New Milford was 3.93, Milford 4.87. Looks like some people just approved what was submitted. No offense to them. But I think one of the things that's difficult about this process, and I have tried to be vocal about it, is that we vote on this, we transmit it to the town, and then ultimately the town has say in what it is again. And it is difficult because it, in my opinion, does diminish our power to say anything because regardless, the end result will be the end result. So whether we put in 10% and they come back with 2%, the end result would be 2%. So it is one of the things I find difficult. And when I look at the budget where it is now, it may not look like this in March or April. And as we look at where money's coming from, and boy, I hope some legislators find some more money for us. And that's hopefully the case. And as breakage comes out and as things go, this art and science becomes more clear. And I always struggle with this time of year because when we could hear about things like the Nor'easter Academy, we haven't heard yet. Things that we could budget on and I think be better about budgeting. We just don't have the full information. So to me, I probably would like it to be lower, but I'm in support of what keeps our staff, keeps our academics going and improving to continue what mission and vision Newington Public Schools has been on. So I just want to say supporting this to transmit to the town, but also putting a huge asterisk that it may look very different in the next coming months. Ms. Roddy has a whole month, I think, March 20th.
It's 11th.
Yeah. So who knows what things are going to look like when that happens. So I just always kind of want to put that caveat in there that, you see whatever, we voted on this and this is X, Y. But please recognize this is a fluid situation and this art and science is not kind to time limits and restrictions with having to pass a budget by Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also just want to point out too that this budget does require us to use our savings account, which is our non-lapsing fund. So, so if there are any breakage points, then that will only eliminate our need to use our savings account. But this is the lowest, at this point, the lowest we, assuming we all agree to it, but we've done our work. So yeah, what Jessica was saying, transmit it to town, it's in their hands, and we will continue the process. So any further discussion? Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, Ms. Weeks.
Sorry, I just want to say thank you again for everyone who put the time and effort into it. It's appreciated by all staff and admin who did that. Those at the table and those not. Shout out Steve.
He's on. Okay, so we're going to vote to transmit our budget of 5.94% over to the town manager.
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
No.
Sean Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Neely,
No.
Timothy Newton,
No.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
Anastasia Yap.
No.
The motion passed 5-4.
Thank you. Graduation date.
So, our new principal of the year has reached out to let me know that they're ready to set, or would like the board to set a graduation date. As members of the board know, we don't have the capacity to hold graduation in-house due to our limited seating and large graduation class. The state legislation passed a law in 2019 allowing the board to set a graduation date, and even if there are snow days after that point, the graduation date can still hold. The legislation is Public Act 19-195. So currently, the June 17th date that is recommended by the high school principal is the 181st day of school, based on our 181-day calendar for kids. So I will turn it back over to the board chair for any further questions or discussion.
Does anyone have any questions or wants to read the motion? Ms. Weaver.
Move the Newington Board of Education approve June 17th, 2025 as a firm graduation date for students in grade 12 at Newington High School.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I think the project grad committee will be happy to have a date officially so they can finalize their plans. All right, we're voting to set graduation to June 17th. Roll call, please.
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
Sean Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Neely,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
Anastasia Yap.
Yes.
The motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. We'll let our principal of the year know. She can book the Oakdale. All right, we're back to public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. 3 minutes, state your name and street for the record. If you are online, you can raise your hand. I did hear that there was a member of the public that tried to raise her hand and couldn't. Ms. Havens, if you're on, would you like to go? All right, well, give her a minute. Ms. Del Buno?
Hi, good evening. Beth Del Buno, 327 Walsh Avenue. I would like to say that I appreciate all of the work that goes into the budget process. I was watching earlier when the information on the buses was presented, and I was wondering, I know the slide that was put up was just one kind of cursory slide that showed a list of items, but I did not see fuel incorporated into that. And I'm curious if workers' compensation is under liability or if that's a separate line item, and were those and other expenses factored in a more detailed presentation that might be available for the public. If so, I would love to have that emailed to me, or I can certainly request it through FOI if that's what's needed. But I would love to see some more information on that. And then in terms of the budget itself, I heard Mr. Newton ask earlier about the mill rate, and I was a bit shocked to see that no one on the board understood the impact of this budget on the mill rate to the town. While I understand it is your job to worry about educating our students and setting policy for the board, it is also your job as elected officials to take into consideration the impact to the taxpayer. And so by my calculations, the increase of this budget that was just adopted to send to the council is over $5.1 million. If you use last year's mill rate figure, which was just over $2.5 million equals 1 mill, then this budget, just on the Board of Ed, not counting the town yet, would increase our mill rate by 2 full mills. Our mill rate now is 39.67, so we would be up 41, close to 42. And that's just taking into consideration the Board of Ed budget. And I think it's really important for elected officials to understand exactly what your impact is when you vote on something. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak if they want to. Still not seeing any. So I guess whoever texted earlier is not on anymore, but okay. We can move on to remarks by board members. Ms. Beatrice.
I just want to take a moment to, again, thank Dr. Brummett and her team. I recognize how difficult these conversations can be and digging deep into the nitty gritty of the budget. I also want to recognize the deep commitment of everyone around this table. I know we've all taken a lot of time. We've had a lot of important conversations to try to set priorities, and I'm very proud of the work that this board has done to take into account the needs of our teachers, our students, and especially our special needs students. So I'm very proud of that work. And I think that this process is never easy, but it certainly is very important and very, very thoughtful. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Mr. Halloran?
Yes, I also wanted to commend everybody who put the work into getting this budget together, presenting it to us, asking our questions, our endless questions. It is not easy to strike a balance between trying to support our students, having the highest quality of education we can provide them. Also being responsible with taxpayer dollars is difficult. As a taxpayer, a property owner myself, as well as a parent of Newington students, I take that very personally. So it's a personal decision, one that we don't take lightly. And once again, just want to recognize Ms. Tigno and Mr. Trillo for being assistant principal and principal of the year for the state of Connecticut. I cannot announce that enough. They are fantastic, wonderful people. They represent our town in the best way possible. And they do that by showing up and putting in the work. And I think at the bare minimum, that's what you have to do, whether you're in the system or on the board, is show up and do the work.
Thank you. Mr. Sharma?
I just want to thank Maureen and Lou just for putting the budget together. And I think talking about the 5.94%, almost all of it is needs, right? It's that there's no wants. Basically, it's the teacher contract, benefits. So, it's all needs. Just one short example, in order to meet our obligation for our teacher contract, our town revenue we need to increase the town revenue by $1 million a year just to meet that 4% increase. So, that's where we are at. So, and I feel like this budget is just what we need to educate our kids. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Newton?
I just want to reiterate that elected officials in this town need to watch what they say to the media, because what they say makes issues harder for board members and other people. And I'm not going to point fingers, names, whatever. They know who they are, that, in the position they were in, they should not have made a comment about what was going to happen inside an executive session to the public. And that's what I think created more animosity than we needed. Thank you.
Good. Ms. Carr?
With every budget season, I always believe the public deserves a reason why I voted the way I did. So while I fully support investing in education and understand the rising costs in special education, employee benefits, and salaries, I also believe that some areas of our budget have become overinflated. I do not oppose a reasonable increase, but I cannot in good conscience roughly approve a 6% increase when families in our community are already struggling with the rising cost of goods, home insurance, and daily living expenses. We need to strike a balance between supporting our schools and ensuring that taxpayers are not overburdened. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Ms. Weaver?
Brittany always got the prepared remarks, so she's always so good at this. I just want to say, what a interesting board meeting in times. But I think the headline, as Mr. Halloran pointed out so eloquently, is we have an assistant principal of the year and now a principal of the year in the state of Connecticut. And if there's anything to come out of Newington Public Schools that I want blasted across any airwaves, it's that. I think it's an incredible honor. I had a great time bragging about yesterday in interviews. And as someone who was a student at Newington High School, at all of our Newington Public Schools, and was a student when Tara was a assistant principal, and now seeing it, and to have my sister under her tutelage as a principal, and to see my cousins come up into that system, it is one of the things that is my North Star in knowing that this is the school system that raised me and the one that I hold very dear. And I just want to say, I take this responsibility. This is my 6th budget. I voted everyone that was bipartisan or not, knowing that, this isn't the end. And I think it's incredibly important that we support the programs that we are putting into place. I cannot emphasize this enough. I talked to fellow board members across the state, across the country, who are dealing with the same issues that we are dealing with. There are some national trends that we have to address. There are state trends we have to address. There are town trends we have to address. The need never goes away and it continues to increase. And I just want to thank the staff for continuing to show up every day as we look at a continual teacher shortage. And let me tell you, I have a sibling in grad school right now to become a teacher, and it is terrifying. I don't know how all of our teachers do it. So I just want to say this budget is still going to be a fluid one, as mentioned, but I want to thank everyone who put that in, because it's not just obviously those at our table are administrators, but those creating those proposals back in September, those doing the work every single day. It is reflective of this point now. So I hope as we move forward, towards June 17th, we can continue to come together as a board. I appreciate everyone's collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yap.
Yes, I would just like to say thank you guys for all the hard work that you've all done year after year. Jessica, I can't believe it's been 6 years. I just thought about that. So thank you as well. And everyone on the board. I would like to say congratulations to Ms. Taino. She is awesome, and the assistant principal as well. And just thank you all for all your hard work and everything that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say that I'm very proud of the work that we did at this table. We made some really tough decisions, and we did have a significant amount of cuts. I think last year we didn't cut nearly as much as we did. So I think we really thought hard about what is in the budget and what we can get away with without having and what we absolutely need. I don't like being accused of not knowing what I'm voting for, because quite frankly, I'm here to represent the students of Newington. And I feel like, especially over the last several years, they've been shafted with the teeny tiny budget increases that we've gotten. And I think right now we're having to make up for a lot of what's been happening or what happened in previous years. We have slides on it, but I have a responsibility to do right by the students who are, some of them are here at the table sometimes, but there's a large populations of students that we are elected to serve. And I feel like this budget puts their best interests at hand, and we will be able to provide them with the education that they need and deserve. So I will continue to advocate with our state legislators to bring more money to our town. We advocated for the excess cost. We will continue to do so. Free lunch, projects like John Wallace. There's so many things that we behind the scenes, and Dr. Brummett also testifies to, so that we can bring money into our town to take the burden off some of our off our local taxpayers. But at this point, the budget that we passed tonight, I feel, is very responsible. And like Ms. Weaver said, it might go down, and we have to have more discussions about what that means for us. But at this point, I think we did everything that we could do to get it to where it actually is. So I just want to say thank you to everybody around the table, online, all the public that came out and spoke to the budget, our town council members. We look forward to seeing you on the 11th. And I do just want to remind the board that regardless of how you vote, the board as a collective whole passed the budget at 5.94% increase. So I would appreciate the support in the board's decision to request that from the town. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion. Go ahead, Jess.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned, 10:03.
Doing it. So,
You were for me.